as we speak. But I got to move on to I'm afraid, the Affluenza story. We're hearing from a report in the Daily Mail, that's a British newspaper, that Ethan Couch, he's the 16-year-old who got drunk and killed 4 people in a car crash. He lived alone in his own mansion. That mansion was given to him by his father after his parents divorced. He threw parties with strangers. He bragged about being able to get drugs and alcohol. This is a story that had you outraged on this program. We felt the outrage coming right at us. Time to bring in, first of all, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Then we will get to Robert Sirico, Father Robert Sirico, a little later for the morality of this. But first, to the judge first. Does this set this decision that Affluenza was a legitimate defense? Now we've heard this background that he lived in a mansion by himself as a teenager. Does that add some legitimacy to that Affluenza defense?
No and no. I mean, this Affluenza thing is not a defense, it's nonsense. I mean, a defense is something that mitigates the culpability or liability of the defendant. This kid pleaded guilty. So there is no defense. The so-called affluenza, a made-up terminology for his life.
It mitigates the finding of fault.
No,
I mean, he's 16 years old. He lives in a mansion by himself.
A defense is supposed to mitigate a finding of fault. This affluenza stuff, which I'd never heard of before, to be honest with you, I don't think anybody does, wasn't used to mitigate the finding of fault. It was used to mitigate the punishment. So it was improperly used because, as I understand this affluenza argument, for which there is no research, about which there are no scientific studies, and for which there's no precedent in American law. He was so accustomed to a rich lifestyle that he didn't know right from wrong. If you don't know right from wrong, if you think you're shooting a sack of potatoes instead of a human being, then you can't be found guilty for what you're doing. But if you pleaded guilty to something because you know drunk driving is wrong, and you know that it can lead to murder, which is what happened, or homicide, which is what happened in this case, it doesn't matter how rich or how poor you are, and that should not affect the punishment one whit.
Well, I can see people saying, I'm poor, that's why I stole the food. You can't find me, you can't put me in prison. Well, that's why I stole the bank account.
That's why this is nonsense, because there is simply no scientific evidence for the proposition that wealth or the absence of it affects a person's ability to know right from wrong.
Okay. Father Sirico, join us, please, on the morality of this. Will you please pass judgment on the parent, the father, who gave a teenager a mansion where he lived by himself and had access to drugs and alcohol? The moral aspect, please.
Well, it's really a classic case of confusing means and ends, isn't it? You think you're providing for your child by giving him things, but you're not forming him to be the man, the end of what human life is like. And I think in a way it's a metaphor for the whole market economy, that our freedom must be ordered to something beyond freedom. It must be ordered to the truth and the dignity of who we are as human beings, using these things as tools, but not worshiping them as ends. This man neglected the formation of his son and the proper and just and necessary guidance for him in a moral sense. It's kind of what Pope Francis is talking about in his critiques of a market economy. He's not critiquing the market economy as such.
I want to get into that in just a moment, but I want to bring in Caleb before we leave this point on affluenza. What do you make of this? Is this a whole generation that doesn't accept blame and responsibility?
It's a large part of a generation, yes. And this young man apparently walked up to one of the passengers and said, "I'm Ethan Couch. I'll get you out of this." Just a punk attitude that has taken over a large part of my generation.
But how could he feel differently being brought up the way he was brought up? I mean,
we're spoiling our children. It's absolutely true, and it's so contrary to what made this country the greatest country on earth. Self-reliance and self-responsibility, and it's something we're not instilling in our children. And
last word to Charles on this one.
Regardless of their economics.
Yeah, I'm glad you just said that, because I was going to say something very similar. We have a redistribution of accountability going on in this country. So if it's a poor kid in Chicago who kills another kid for wearing the wrong color bandana, it wasn't his fault. It was a video game's fault. It was a gun manufacturer's fault. From the bottom to the top, redistribution of accountability, and it's killing our kids.